Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing Bill Murphy, the founder of Fresh Monkey Fiction. Bill is here to promote Eagle Force 40th anniversary action figure line. Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we start, I just want to do a couple things. First, I just want to give a little bit background on Bill's history. So, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. You are the founder of Fresh Monkey Fiction. It's a company that was started in 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, now this part, correct me if I'm wrong, because when I was doing some research. Now, you worked are you still working in Hollywood or on any of the?
I am, yeah. I've been working in the visual effects industry for most of my career. So yeah, and so this Fresh Monkey Fiction is sort of my side business. Yeah, so I'm producing sort of independent toys on the side.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, because I want to go over your history, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong. So, correct me if I'm wrong. You worked as a storyboard artist. Is that correct?
Yeah, so most of my career has been, either storyboarding or animation or visual effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, some of the big budget movies that you have worked on, and you can include in more movies if you want to. Now, Solaris, that came out in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to our comic book fans, this next big important movie, X2, in 2003. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I have to say this. I love the opening White House scene with Nightcrawler. That is amazing.
That's funny you mentioned that, because that's the sequence we did the visual effects for that sequence. So yeah, so I was working on that sequence with
my God,
with the team there. So yeah, that came through the facility that I was with at the time.
Because that was I have to say, that is one of the most incredible opening scenes of a movie. That is. And
yeah, I think it still stands out. Like I actually, it was on, I forget what streaming service I was on the other day. Maybe it was Disney, actually, Disney Plus. And I was like, I haven't watched that in a long time. So I actually watched it the first 20 minutes and I was like, oh, I forget how good that sequence was. It's still a lot of fun even to watch it now.
Yes, it is. And I have to say this, and funny you mention that, because about 2-3 months ago, I just wanted to watch that, X2. So I was on Disney Plus just to watch that opening scene, and then after I watched that opening scene, I'm like, that's it. I mean,
I don't think I went back and watched the rest, but definitely that opening sequence brought back a lot of memories. Because that took quite a lot of iterations to get through that sequence, but it really came out. When we were working on it, I think we didn't really realize how big a sequence it was going to be in the movie, because when you're working in visual effects, you usually don't see the full movie. You just get snippets of the sequences that you're working on, right? So we got that sequence at the facility that I was in, and obviously being a huge comic book fan, myself and the supervisor were super excited about working on it. And then trying to bring that Nightcrawler moment to life, I think was really a lot of fun.
Because I mean, you guys brought it. You did, And I really mean this sincerely. You did it justice, because it reminded me of one of the old Claremont Byrne X-Men issues. I want to say was in 110, where I think Nightcrawler he popped out 3 times, hitting some guy at the circus.
Yeah. Like we couldn't really throw Bamf on the screen, but we really wanted it to feel that way, right? Like, so that was a lot of the supervisor I was working on with at the time. Also was a huge comic book fan, and so we were really passionate about trying to figure out how that would work. Obviously, Bryan Singer had the vision for what it was, but we tried to bring a lot to it, and a lot of ideas that were coming from the comic book moments that we were all super fond of.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I have to continue. If not, sorry. I'm going to continue on. Okay. You also did the visual effects for Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And then also too, now correct me if I'm wrong, you were on the ground floor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You were doing the visual effects as a digital production manager, Rhythm Hughes. And the movie you guys worked on was The Incredible Hulk.
Yep. Yeah. So we also worked on Incredible Hulk as well, and that was not the Ang Lee version, but obviously the version that came out after, that was part of the original cinematic universe when Iron Man and Hulk came out. You know, in the early movies. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I'm kind of sidetracking, but did you know that they were trying to connect the movie to make this connection, this cinematic universe? Did you guys have any idea
I
that
mean,
Robert Downey? Mhm.
yeah, we didn't really. I mean, we knew that they were working on Iron Man at the same time, and we knew there were going to be some crossover moments in terms of some characters and other types of things. Of course, you know, we weren't at Marvel at the time when they were
Mhm.
thinking about all this. We were just doing the visual effects for it. But again, being a huge comic book fan, also very excited that I was working on that movie. Yeah, I mean, at that time, you know, Kevin Feige was coming in every week and talking about sort of what they're working on with Iron Man, and
Mhm.
then Iron Man came out first, and so like we, you know, it blew up at the box office, and while we were ramping down on finishing the visual effects for Hulk, so obviously he came in and was super excited about where this was going. But I think at the time they didn't really know that like they were going to be building what they have now. I think they were. Kevin is a huge, you know, obviously a huge comic book fan as well,
Mhm.
is bringing all that to life. And I think they envisioned obviously doing some movies and having some crossovers, but I think at the time I don't know if any of us really thought that it would turn into what it is turned into now in
Yeah.
terms of really reinventing, you know, the Hollywood summer blockbuster, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then also too, no, correct me if I'm wrong. You created one of the first web series, um, Amanda Hades. Is that correct?
Like we did Amanda Hades early on, even before YouTube was a thing. We started, you know, a few buddies of mine as well were really interested in doing video for the internet
Hmm.
as it was becoming a thing. So we decided, hey, this is a pretty good platform that we can use to distribute
Hmm.
video content. And again,
Yeah.
this was way before YouTube. So, you know, really, you know, we were trying to experiment with, hey, what's it like to put up video content on the internet? And
Yes.
again, this was early days of that. We had to wait for things to download or things
Hmm.
to load. You know, it was very different than how it is today. But really looking at trying to how you know, how you would do video.
Hmm.
And of course, now, you know, with YouTube and everything else, it's completely changed. But at
Hmm.
the time, there really wasn't anything going on,
Yeah.
you know, on the web in terms of, you know, maybe you were going to watch a movie trailer or
Hmm.
something like
Yeah.
that, you know. But any sort of even short form content at the time wasn't really a thing.
Hmm.
And that was happening during kind of the internet, you know, boom in the early 2000s and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because that series started in 2006, and I'm going to ask if, and then it was, now correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully, because I just watched it. And let me be honest, I love it. It has a nice little charm to it. It does. I'm not being sarcastic or anything, but because it kind of reminded me of, remember when they did the RoboCop series back in the 90s?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
had that, you know, it had heart, and like I said, it had a charm to it. It did.
Yeah, what it also had was zero budget. So we also we were all kind of doing it for free on the side. You know, it wasn't our full time jobs at the side at the time. It was really just like, hey, let's just make some content and let's throw it on the internet and sort of see what happens. So it has a little bit of certainly. You know, it definitely tells the story of the time in terms of, you know, budgets and what we had to work with, and that was really even before like, you know, that was even just the beginning of sort of digital cameras and those kind of things too,
Yes.
and figuring that stuff out. So it was a lot, you know, using the technology for the time. It's funny, you know, we were telling a story in the future,
Yes.
but obviously it was taking place in the early 2000s. So, you know, you look at some of that footage and you still see those big CRT monitors,
Yes.
you know, but now in the future those monitors don't exist. They're obviously all flat panels, right? So it's just funny to kind of look at that now to see like how much even the course of a decade after we shot that,
Hmm.
how technology had just shifted around, you know, and into different places with, you know, that was even before like iPhones and even things like that, right?
Hmm.
So yeah.
I'm just, if you have, can you just give a brief blurb about the series and to listeners, it is available online. It is. So
Yeah.
are you okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically, we had done a series about this character called Amanda Hades, which was, it took place in sort of the, not the too far future, but really about just, at the time, just really looking at like what would it be like to sort of expose corporations and media in sort of a different way. So that was sort of how we took it. The hacker stuff was still very big at the time, so we took sort of advantage of that mindset and stuff. So yeah, so it was a fun thing to do. I think we did about as many episodes as we could do, given the fact that we were sort of all doing it as a side hustle thing. But it was certainly, we spent a few years working on it, and it was fun to put together for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, and did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, that's most of my, as I said, like most of my career before I got into toys, and even still today, is working in visual effects. And the toy thing has always been a passion of mine since college. Even before that, even as a kid, I was a huge fan of toys, and always wanted to make action figures, and that was always something I wanted to do, but it was always a little bit out of reach. Me a little bit. I had played around with doing some customs and things I wanted to do myself, and figured, meeting friends at conventions and people that worked at toy companies, and establishing relationships online with people on toy boards and stuff who worked in the industry, but didn't really see a way to actually get anything produced outside of kind of doing it, sort of in your basement, so to speak. But with Kickstarter, as Kickstarter became a thing, I saw an opportunity there to be able to try to do something, and that kind of helped launch Fresh Monkey Fiction to kind of where it's at today.
Okay, so I'm going to say, before we start with the talking about Fresh Monkey, I just want to give one shout out before we really jump in. So I just want to give a big shout out to Hannah Bahedri of Superfan Promotion for setting up this interview. Hannah, thank you very much for setting this up. Bill, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Superfan's been great. They really helped us promote the 40th anniversary. And we were originally planning to do the Eagle Force 40th anniversary as a Kickstarter, and the last minute we pivoted, and I'm sure we'll get into that later, but they worked with us of going like, hey, we're going to go down this direction, now we're going to pivot over here. And they got us to where we needed to be in terms of interviews like yourself and press and stuff. So they've been really great. Yeah.
Okay. Now, where can listeners follow you on social media?
The best thing to do is follow. You can go to our website at freshmonkeyfiction.com, and there's links there to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so you can follow us any of those. We post a lot more on, I think, Instagram or Facebook than we do Twitter, but definitely feel free to not only follow us there, but make comments. I like to engage with the audience a lot. I like to get feedback from the folks who are following us, and see if we can kind of introduce some of those things into the current lines that we're doing. So we definitely are active there. So I encourage folks to follow us for sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Oklahoma. So grew up there, and then relocated to California it's been over 20 years now. So yeah. And I have a career mainly in visual effects, and wanted to do that most of my life. So obviously couldn't really do too much visual effects in the Midwest, although there is some stuff going on there, believe it or not. But I felt like really where I wanted to go with my career was going to be more either on the East Coast or the West Coast. So I decided to definitely head out to Los Angeles like everybody else. Yeah. Okay.
What was your first comic book or comics that you read?
Oh, that's a good one. It's interesting. When I grew up, I had a cousin who owned a comic book store. And so that was really great. He didn't live super close. He lived like an hour away. So it wasn't my local comic book shop, but we would go visit him, and he'd always give me like free stuff. So I ended up getting one of the toy lines actually we started with for Fresh Monkey was called Amazing Heroes.
Yes. And
it's based on public domain heroes. And how I found out about those heroes was because my cousin had given me some free public domain comic books. They were, kind of raggedy or whatever, but like I was like, who are these characters that are not Spider-Man and Hulk
Yes.
and Batman. So I came familiar with those at an early age. But I was mainly a Marvel kid growing up. Obviously I knew about DC and their universe there, but I really didn't get into DC until college. I was mainly Marvel. Huge fan of G.I. Joe and what Larry Hama did with the G.I. Joe stuff as well. So, but yeah, most of the stuff I collected, I think the early days was probably, I think it was mainly before, like if I started collecting before G.I. Joe came out, and that was mostly Spider-Man books at the time. I was huge into Spider-Man. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, what was your favorite or were your favorite toys as a kid? And do you still have any of them?
I do have a lot of my toys that I had as a kid. Believe it or not, my parents didn't throw anything away. So I actually ended up with a lot of stuff still. Most of it is in bad shape because I had a brother and we would play a lot with our toys. But we still have a lot of that stuff. But as a kid, I collected Mego when I was little, Mego action figures, but then quickly moved into G.I. Joe. I was a huge G.I. Joe fan. Would collect any of the figures I could get a hand of. That and Star Wars were my two big things. Wasn't super into He-Man or Ninja Turtles. Obviously had a few figures, but I was really into G.I. Joe and Star Wars. Yeah.
Wow, and you still and I'm just repeating, you still have them, right?
Yeah, I have most of the stuff I grew up with. The one thing I don't have, which is kind of weird, is my brother and I had this huge Smurfs collection, and we don't know what happened to it. We kept it. I remember vividly how we stored it. We had this old Pac-Man mini arcade box.
Okay.
Obviously we'd done something with the arcade thing, but we put all our Smurfs in there. It was about this big. We both remember like storing it there, and we don't know what happened to it. We have everything else from when we were kids. We have all our G.I. Joes, our Legos, the whole thing. We don't have that Smurfs box, so we don't know what happened to that. And my mom doesn't recall selling it or giving it away. She was never. She was great. Like she never gave away our toys unless she asked us first. And even through college, she kept stuff in our closets there. It's not a lot of it's still there, but we can't remember what happened to that Smurf box. So yeah.
So I'm going to say Bill because for me, I still have all my Star Wars action figures. Yeah, I mean they're all, but I mean they're still beat up because, and we probably will talk about a little bit more about it. But I mean, even though we're like playing with our action figures, technically we're making our own stories.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm and that even through today in Eagle Force and other lines I do, the story component, the mythology component is one of the biggest things I always look to do when I'm doing my own toy line. And that resonated for me playing with toys as a kid, creating my own universes, customizing a lot of my own characters, because I couldn't find what I wanted on the shelf. And but I still have a lot of that still today.
That's great. Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm going to continue on. So I know like you already gave a brief history of, like how you basically moved to California. Let's see. How long have you been working in the film industry and the visual effects industry?
Long time, since probably 99. So really long time. Yeah. So that's been, and then still is my main job today. The toy thing is that it's the Fresh Monkey Fiction thing is a one-man band, but with some awesome folks who are helping me collaborate, from sculptors to concept artists to a bunch of folks who are really helping me with Fresh Monkey. But Fresh Monkey is pretty much just me on the side while I'm also working full time. So yeah.
So before I start getting to the history of how Fresh Monkey Fiction started, do you want to give out any shout outs to your team members or any?
I think, just as far as the Fresh Monkey stuff, there's, again, a few sculptors that we work with and some concept folks who are helping us out, and even just some of the fans who have become sort of great friends across this adventure. And I think that, it speaks to a little bit of this, and I think we'll get into a little bit with the Kickstarter thing, but it's sort of that, building that community, right? And that collaborative atmosphere is something that's really important to me. And as not only a fan but also a creator, right? Like, so as a fan of things, when I buy a lot of toys that I don't make, and really would love, for some of those companies to listen more to some of the feedback from, the fans, and some of them do, which is great. And then being a creator, I also like to do the same thing and figure out like how to build that community around the things that we all love.
Okay, so now, Fresh Monkey Fiction. So, what is how did the company get started?
Yeah, so essentially, a few friends and I were always like wanting to do toys. We had dabbled in a few other things, wanting to get it out there. And we were playing around with ideas that we sort of wanted to do. And I really thought, hey, like, let's lean into this Kickstarter model, because making action figures beyond just customs is expensive. There's a lot of money needed for sculpting, for tooling, for manufacturing, for fulfillment. And it was just something that was a little out of reach. But when Kickstarter started, I realized like there might be an opportunity here to try to leverage Kickstarter and then see if we can build a community around a brand to kind of make it and bring it to life. And so all those kind of dots connected, I think, at once. Like that's where all the things sort of coalesced at one time, where I was like at a place where I felt like I knew enough people in the industry that I could lean on for questions and help. I had enough bandwidth that I thought I could take something on part-time and bring it together. There was a community on the internet that was formed as well. So all of those things sort of coalesced, and I think really the right moment, and decided that, okay, I wanted to do something simple. And the first thing we launched with was our Amazing Heroes line, which was one of the lines, getting back to what we talked about earlier, toys we grew up with, comic books. One of the lines I loved was Marvel Superhero Secret Wars.
Oh, yes.
Loved that line. Like that was my favorite line as a kid, because I was just a Marvel fan, and there really, outside of Mego, was not really any action figures around at that time for Marvel. And so when I went and launched my first line, I sort of based it around the type and style of that Secret Wars line. And that's where I decided, hey, at that point, like, let's do something here with this. I had some friends, because I work in visual effects, who had done digital sculpting and modeling. So I had access to people who could help me sculpt and were willing to try something fun. We decided to go digitally versus hand sculpting. And at that time, things were moving in that direction anyway. And I'd done a lot of it in visual effects as well, and ZBrush and those kind of things. So we said, okay, let's do this. Let's sculpt a figure that looks like this. And then let's figure out like what characters we should do.
Yes.
And then so I was thinking, oh, like I'd love to do some licensed things, but those are like super expensive. I can't really afford to do that. And then, like I was talking about, I was like, oh, what happened to those public domain heroes that I remember from being a kid, right? And having those comics. There's a few of those there that we could potentially, those had really cool designs, and not a lot of people know about them. And I think that'd be kind of fun. And so we were doing that. I was doing that. And then I was like, okay, there might be some indie comics that I could think about talking to and see if they'd want to do a figure. So I just like the toy thing, I had built up a big, base of folks who loved comics on the internet. I was part of a bunch of, forums and those kind of things. And so I knew people who knew people at that point. So they helped me get introduced to folks like Mike Allred, who does Madman.
Yes.
They helped me get introduced to the folks that do Captain Action. And they were like, hey, we'd love to do a figure with you. We like this style. Mike Allred was like, oh, I'd love to get a Madman that would fit in with the rest of my Secret Wars, because Mike's a huge toy nerd like I am. So he was like, let's do it. So we were, all the things kind of came together, and Kickstarter was there as well. And so, okay, let's give it a shot. And so that's how it led to sort of creating Fresh Monkey Fiction. And then sort of the first line was Amazing Heroes. And that now we've gone into, I think we're at like wave 5 or 6 with Amazing Heroes right now. When we brought in more public domain and more indie comic book heroes. And that's been a lot of fun.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So, because I know some of the figures that you brought in, and like you already mentioned, Madman, E-Man, I was kind of surprised to see that. I mean, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, going back to some of these, growing up in the 80s, there was an interesting indie comic scene at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was a little before Image
Yeah.
came out, but there were these characters like John Sable and E-Man and Badger that existed and that were outside of the typical Marvel and DC world. Going to the comic book store, you would see sort of these indie publishers like First Comics and other publishers. Nexus was one of those things. So, growing up with that stuff, it really resonated with me. And I was like, okay, I think I could make those figures work with some of the bodies that we sort of had with Amazing Heroes, because they were all still superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, this Madman thing worked out really well. Maybe I can connect with these other creators and see if they'd be interested in having us do a short run of an action figure for Badger or E-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Let's see. Also, I have to say, because I went on the website, I was looking at those figures. I also love the card backing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, it was like a nice homage to the Superpower action figure line that DC did.
Yeah,
like it's bright, it's attractive, and it grabs you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we took a lot of cues from those lines as well, like trying to mix a little bit of what was popular in the 80s, because that was part of the reason I was wanting to do the line. And I wanted there to be some cross sale on the back so you could see other characters. I wanted there to be bios and other types of things, because especially around the public domain heroes, not a lot of people knew who those figures were, right? Or who those characters were. And so I wanted to kind of expose that a little more and say, oh, this came out of this comic book and it's not something I just made up. There's actually a long history here of a plethora of public domain heroes. I mean, it is endless, the amount of public domain heroes that are out there from the 30s and 40s. And they're really great. They have some fun origins. They have some fun costume designs. But I wanted to kind of bring that to the card backs as well, with some original art that we had commissioned for the line, and kind of bring it all together. That was I am as a whole, I'm not a toy collector who keeps things in the package.
Yes,
I open most of my toys. My desk in front of me now has just tons of open toys in front of it, but packaging to me was still pretty important, because I think that, you have an opportunity there to bring someone into your world, right? Like you can put a nice, photo on it or whatever, but if you can bring like a little bit of a bio or a little bit of an origin story, or show some cross sale with the universe that you're trying to build, I think that brings more people kind of into your space versus just like selling the figure in a bag or, having just some nice art. I think you can really, and again, that's all from the 80s stuff. And 80s stuff was just loaded with all that, right? So I took all that and I said, I want to do something very similar to that.
Okay. And then I'm going off the cuff here, because I know you said Captain Action is one of your figures, and it looks really good, because I remember seeing I remember one of those old 1960s comics that had an ad for Captain Action, and I think DC did a short series of Captain Action.
They did, yeah. So yeah, Captain Action is not in the public domain, but it is owned by the Captain Action guys. But it started as a toy line. That toy line, for folks who don't recall, was Captain Action, but he would also disguise himself as other heroes. So you could get outfits and masks and other things to make Captain Action into, Captain America and other types of, heroes as well. But it's been at a few different publishers, and I think at that time I think DC did it for a while. Dynamite has done some stuff with them. But yeah, and so I was like, okay, this is a fun character. It's a character that people know about. I really like the idea behind Captain Action, and they were really open to doing a figure. So I was like, okay, let's see if we can add him into the line.
And then real quickly, I just want to add to our listeners also too, your Amazing Heroes also have, I'm just trying to think of the comic book series that Dynamite is doing. Is it Superpowers? The one with the Black Terror and
so
like the original Daredevil, I think.
Yeah, because all of those characters are public domain. quite a few comic book companies have done versions of their version of those characters. Dynamite's was called Superpowers, and it was a book that brought out a lot of those public domain characters together. Yeah.
All right. And then before I continue on, how did you come up with the name of your company? Where did Fresh Monkey Fiction come from?
It's funny. It was something that I created in college. It was just a random thing that a few of us were just talking about. I forget how it really came up. I had this thing called Fresh Monkey in college, and it was like, okay, do we want to do a production company called Fresh Monkey? And that's what was always there. And then the fiction piece got added to it later when I started the company, because going back to what I said earlier, a lot of the stuff I do is really about storytelling, right? And the fiction piece of that, right? And saying like, hey, like I want to bring a bit of fiction to all of this. And build out worlds and universes and characters and those kind of things. That's kind of how it all came together for Fresh Monkey Fiction when I launched the toy company.
Oh, okay. Now, also your products, you also sell on the Fresh Monkey Fiction website, digital comics, the Midnight Men, and then also too you have digital books, the Pendragon Armada, is that correct?
Yeah, so we've got a few other things too. We've got Midnight Men, which is a comic book that you can get digitally on the website about a group of World War II adventure pulp heroes. I brought that mythology into Eagle Force as well. So that's part of the larger Eagle Force universe now as well.
Oh, okay.
And so you'll start to see elements of those characters show up in the Eagle Force world. So if you pick up a couple of the Midnight Men comics, you'll start to see some things that are also represented in Eagle Force as well. And then there is the Pendragon Armada, which is a series of novellas that is about a king. It's sort of retelling the King Arthur story,
yes,
but with a sci-fi spin. So it's got a science fiction spin on the King Arthur story.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Now, I'm going to ask, are your products geared, I'm trying to rephrase this question. You saw the question, but, so are you trying to gear it more towards collectors, or is it for everybody? And I'm being serious when I ask this question is because from collectors who want to keep it in the package, and, to the 10-year-old who wants to open up, play with, action figures like Vulcan, one of the Amazing Hero action figures, to go on a mission with someone from the Eagle Force crew. So, again, is the toy lines, is it for everybody?
I mean, it's made for everyone, certainly. Like it can be exposed to everyone. But most of the stuff we're doing is towards the collector market, because that's who's sort of putting their dollar toward it at the end of the day. Yeah. But I have kids myself. They like playing with the toys that I make. But we're really appealing to collectors. We're not in places like Walmarts or Targets or places where this stuff is really exposed to a younger audience, although they could easily play with it.
Yes.
Most of the folks that are collecting our stuff are collectors in their 30s or 40s who either like public domain heroes or like Eagle Force, or I've got a lot of feedback around just the world that we're building and people just excited about the world that we're building. So that's actually the nice part of it too. And but when I get those comments, those are the ones that are really fun, because we're putting a lot of effort into building out this mythology in this world. And to see people do customs of figures that we haven't made yet, because the characters really speak to them, is really exciting, right? Like that's really awesome. Or taking the figures and putting them in dioramas and shooting photographs and stuff. So that stuff is really really the exciting piece.
Off the cuff questions. How exciting is it to see your kids play with the action figures you make?
It's fun. I mean, it's fun. They're super into video games. I wish they played with them more, but they are, when I'm going and designing a character, they'll come to my desk and go, who is that? And if they have a mask on, who's under that mask, Dad? I want to know who's under that mask,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or what's that character's backstory? Or when are you going to actually get that figure made? Or are you going to make it? And that's kind of fun because, they're obviously they're into sort of the thing that I'm making, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Okay, so now we are here. We're going to talk about the Eagle Force 40th anniversary action figure line. Now, Bill, before we begin, where can people pick up this action figure where can they go to buy these action figures?
Yeah, so right now we've got this Eagle Force 40th anniversary event that is going on for the next month. We have partnered with Big Bad Toy Store exclusively, so the product is there for pre-order right now, and we're doing sort of our own version of a crowdfunding campaign where Big Bad Toy Store has committed to doing 18 figures, and then we have another 18 or so that are in this crowdfunding model for the next month where you can go and pre-order them, and if we meet the minimum order sales, we'll actually move it into production. If we don't meet it, we'll cancel the order. Obviously, Big Bad Toy Store doesn't take the money up front, so we'll just cancel it. We're not gonna produce it at this time. Doesn't mean it won't ever get made, but we won't put it into the next production cycle. That's going to be for the next year and a half. So we're trying to get as many figures into the production cycle as we can. They'll probably deliver once we make them over a period of maybe a quarter or two. They won't all drop at the same time, but we want to get them into the production cycle. So yeah, at our website, freshmonkeyfiction.com, you can see our Eagle Force 40th anniversary page. It lists the figures we're making. It lists the stretch goals. There's links to Big Bad Toy Store. You can go to Big Bad Toy Store directly today and put stuff on pre-order. Okay.
All right. Now, because I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of Eagle Force, the action figures. Now, and can you explain to our listeners, and even including to me, what is the Eagle Force action figures?
Yeah, so essentially, Eagle Force came out in the early '80s, around the same time as G.I. Joe. It only lasted about one wave, so it was only on the market for about a year or so, but they had, I think it was about a dozen or so figures, play sets, those type of things. They were originally 3-inch metal die-cast figures. The Eagle Force members were all in gold. They came out around the same time as G.I. Joe. They didn't really last in the market very long. G.I. Joe kind of came in at the same time, and I think had more appeal towards kids at the time. And we didn't see anything past the first wave. I was able to acquire the license, and about 5 years ago, we relaunched it as an Eagle Force Returns line that we kickstarted as well. And we modernized a lot of those characters and brought them up, and we aged them up. So Captain Eagle, who was the head of Eagle Force in the 80s, in our world now is in his late 70s, and an older soldier. And he was recruiting sort of a new team of Eagle Force. So again, we're continuing with the original line and the storyline, and bringing it into the modern world now. And so we have a few of our original characters, as well as some new characters that we created for the more Eagle Force Returns line.
That is so cool. That is just so cool that that you're like that you aged up Captain Eagle, because and I'm not trying to put down G.I. Joe or anything, because the G.I. Joe figures like Duke from the 80s, when they brought G.I. Joe, today G.I. Joe products are made with the Duke action figure. He's almost like Peter Parker. He never ages.
Yeah. And so that was a choice we made. I mean, it was one that I debated against for a while, but I thought a lot of people wanted us to just reimagine the line with the same characters. But I'm a big fan of legacy characters, going back to, I think, comic books. And even, I mentioned as a kid, I wasn't really into DC, but I got into DC in college. and realized that you have all these legacy characters like the JSA, and then moving into
Yes.
other Justice League and stuff. So that really resonated with me as an older comic book collector, and I kind of wanted to bring that into Eagle Force, where we took those characters and essentially aged them up in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they still exist, and then they were basically bringing in sort of a new team. So you got the best of both worlds, right? You got the original characters who are still there, obviously a little older, but very much active, and then you're able to kind of bring in sort of new, fresh blood, so to speak, new characters to come in and really build out the world. But there was a lot of collectors who really were like, oh, that's great. They're not against what we're doing, but they were like, hey, I really sort of wanted just my Captain Eagle in gold outfit, wanted that interpretation. So when we started to think about the 40th anniversary, I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity to kind of revisit those looks as well.
Yes.
And make what we're calling sort of Eagle Force Classics, which is those characters, reimagined with modern 4-inch articulation, but still in their gold outfits.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Let's see. Before we continue on, now Eagle Force was created by Bill Barron and Paul Kirchner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then and now before we started, recording and stuff, you've met Bill and Paul, correct?
Yeah, not in person, but we've talked on the phone a few times. Yes, and when I was relaunching the line, I reached out to them to let them know that I was relaunching it. Wanted to see if they wanted to be involved in some way. Paul did some of the artwork for our card art when we relaunched, which was fun. Bill sent me a bunch of stuff, a bunch of artwork that he had that never was out there at all. Paul sent me some stuff that he had in his attic that he was just kind of sitting on and wanted to know if I wanted it. So they were pretty happy that we were able to kind of relaunch the line.
Nice. That's really nice. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, before we started recording, you said you had some of the original figures. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I had quite a few. I didn't have everyone.
Oh yeah.
I had about a half dozen. So about half a line. I had the Eagle Island playset as well. I didn't have all the vehicles, but I had a few. So I was very familiar, obviously, with the line as a kid. I think also one of the reasons the line resonated with me was the artwork that Paul had done was comic book style artwork. And so being a comic book fan, I was like, oh, this is kind of some neat packaging. And, a lot of the packaging at the time was more painted art. That would carry through. And this was more comic book style, which I hadn't seen too much on some of the lines. And so it kind of drew my eye at the time because of that. And I kind of got into it. And, I liked the idea behind the characters. They were a lot of fun. The villains were a lot of fun. The line did play into a lot of stereotypes at the time, but a lot of lines did that in the 80s. And, we're sort of, trying to, not play into those same stereotypes, but also, again, we're trying to bring those characters forward as well and give them a kind of a deep history also.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, have you ever seen one in the wild, like in mint condition at a con, at an antique toy shop?
Oh, sure. I mean, occasionally I'll run into a mint on card version. I think the only one I have on card is the cat, I think. And that was because I bought it much later. The ones I had as a kid, I all opened, so I didn't have any of the original packaging. But, and I've gone back since and bought most of the figures. Well, all of the figures. I don't have all the vehicles yet from the original line, but most of them are all loose. I don't really have too much stuff on the package.
No, yeah. But I'm because part of me is still the collector that wants to keep stuff in boxes, but part of me still wants to. I mean, I'm going to be honest. We're just big kids. We have more money, we can buy stuff. The things that we couldn't afford when we were kids, and we like to put them on our desk, on our shelves. We want them out. We want to set them quote unquote free. And that's the fun part. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons too that our packaging is collector friendly, so that you can open up the figures and take them out and then put them back in if you want. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do that. So in case you wanted to keep them on the card, you could. If not, you could open them up and take them out.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so now for this line that you have out, um like how many like I guess I'm gonna ask, like how many figures do you have out right now?
Right now, with the original Kickstarter that we did, we have about a little under 30 figures that are available at our partner, Zyka Toys.
Mhm.
They were our partner, distribution partner for the line and our production partner. And so you can go there, and there's links off of our website to go
Mhm.
there, and you can get the figures as well. And those are on the market now. We have sold out of a few characters,
Mhm.
which we might look at reissuing next year.
Mhm.
And then with the pre-orders on the 40th anniversary, we have about 18 that are going to be guaranteed to get made, and
Mhm.
another 15 or so, like I mentioned, that we're doing in sort of this, sort of crowdfunding event to see how
Mhm.
many pre-orders we can get, to see if we can unlock the
Mhm.
ability to produce even more of those. So
Okay.
yeah.
Let's see. Now, um, Eagle Force is the team. Who are their villains? Who are they fighting against?
So they fight against Riot,
Mhm.
and they, the original line, they fought against General Mamba.
Mhm.
And then in the Returns line, we created a new villain called Ultima Thule, who
Mhm.
they're fighting against there. Although again, for the 40th line, we're bringing back General Mamba because people wanted, interpretation of that character. So, and then we've created some sublines
Uh-huh.
underneath Eagle Force as well.
Mhm.
Things like Monster Force, Ninja Force,
Yes, yeah.
Freedom Force. So we're building out the worlds there as well, and so we can touch on different themes. So
Mhm.
obviously, your Eagle Force line is going to be more military based.
Mhm.
Then you have Monster Force, which has sort of a horror monster type theme. You've got Freedom Force, which is a little more superhero
Mhm.
elements that are coming in. You have Adventure Force, which is more 70s style adventure kind of heroes that
Mhm.
are similar to those type of heroes. So we're building in sort of these different worlds around Eagle Force
Yes.
and trying to build out the larger mythology. One of the things we launched as a part of this crowdfunding campaign of this event was a wiki page where you
Mhm.
can go, and it's linked off our main site, where you can go and read about all the different teams and characters. And
Mhm.
if you're a comic book fan, which obviously you are, I see by the back of your, behind you, there's a bunch of long boxes. I grew up with tons of the handbooks, Marvel handbooks, those type of.
Yes.
I love those things as a kid. But now with the internet, you can do things like a wiki page,
Yeah.
where you can do something similar, where people can go and read about the character, read their bios, read their history. So we're building out this wiki right now that has all the different Eagle Force factions underneath
Mhm.
it, where you can see about a bunch of different teams.
And then also too, the Fresh Monkey Fiction website. There's also a digital handbook on Eagle Force. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did a Kickstarter for a physical handbook,
Mm-hmm.
but now we have a digital one available as well too, if you want to buy that. Yeah.
That's that's pretty awesome. Before I move on to our listeners, so the Forces of Evil Riot, that is an acronym for Roving International Organization of Tyranny. Is that correct?
Right. That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
All right. Now I know you said that the original figures were made in die cast. Are any of the current figures, are they going to, I'm just asking, are they going to be in die cast? Are you guys thinking of, are you guys
Yeah,
thinking about that?
probably not. The cost of doing die-cast metal now is just super expensive. On top of the fact that the original figures had 5 points of articulation, so it was
Mhm.
easier to do something like that. Whereas the new figures have over 15 points of articulation, so it's a
Mhm.
lot harder to do metal die-cast with that much articulation. So we probably won't. We're doing gold paint ops
Yes. Mhm.
applications that look similar to the gold die cast, but we
Mhm.
probably won't do any die cast metal figures.
Okay. All right. And then let's see. You mentioned the articulation on the figures, the accessories, and I saw like now correct me if I'm wrong, most of them would have like either interchangeable hands. Of course, they have weapons. And I think on your, correct me if I'm wrong, the Monster Force, you can change out the heads too. Is that correct?
Yeah, many of the figures will come with extra heads, additional accessories like extra hands and weapons, because we wanted to build as much variety as we could into the figure.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a bunch of folks who are army building and will like to build like, generic soldiers and those kind of things. So this allows you to buy this figure and use it this way, or attach that head and use it that way.
Yes.
And that way you have a lot of customizability within a figure. Yeah.
I think that's so cool because I was looking through the webpage and I saw one, and I think the Monster Force one there was one where there's a werewolf head.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Head, yeah, there's like soldier heads, masked heads, or human heads, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, you have helmets and those kind of things. So you get a lot, I think, with the figure. So if you wanted to buy a few multiples, which many folks do, you have different configurations you can put them in on your display.
That is so cool. Now, the Eagle Force action line, is it if someone wants to like put them next to their G.I. Joe collection, they can do that?
Yeah, if your collection is like 4-inch modern G.I. Joe type figures or other figures in that scale, they fit right along with that. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's some other lines out there like Marauder Task Force or Petruvian Hacks from Boss Fight, or Chicken Fried Toys, or Spiro's doing Animorphs the Kingdom in that scale. So they all fit within that scale.
That's pretty cool. Okay. And right now, how many waves are you looking at right now? Well,
yeah. So yeah, we have basically 4 waves available now. Each wave has about 6 to 8 characters, depending on the wave. And then there's another 3 waves that are available for pre-order that will start hitting in Q2 next year, and then we'll follow subsequent quarters after that. So yeah, I think, right now, I think between wave 1, I think we're closer to around and if you look at the 40th anniversary, which is split up into a few different waves, we're about, I think, 8 waves in so far. With the current offering right now, it's close to 50 figures, I think, that we'll either have out or that are going to come up over the next, couple of years through the pre-order mechanism that we have with Big Bad Toy Store.
Wow, that's really impressive. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Like it's fun to have them all sitting on your desk or your shelf and go, oh, like I made that, and not only that, like we built a world around it, and the fans made it too. I mean, that's the big thing. Like, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do anything without the community who comes in and support it. I mean, that's the big thing for us. Like, we're going to put some ideas out there. If you follow and you put the pre-order in, or you support the Kickstarter, or whatever mechanism we use, then we'll go and make it. If you don't, then we're probably not going to make it, and that's okay too. It lets us understand like what the market is for it, and then we'll go and produce it. And along the way, while we're manufacturing, we can make some tweaks, and we'll post images of, hey, we are thinking about changing this sculpt or adding this. What do you think? Or maybe we're going to add this paint deco. And so that's the kind of, you can get that fan feedback. And again, I can't guarantee we're going to do everything that everybody asks for, but if you throw it out there and it's something we can do, I'm certainly going to try to make it happen.
Yeah. And then in the future, are you looking to do any vehicles or play sets for this action figure line?
I would love to do play sets and vehicles. I think the vehicles are pretty expensive, so they're harder to produce. I am interested in doing maybe some cardboard type play sets in the future. I'm a big fan of those. Growing up, like I said, with Star Wars and stuff, there was a lot of cardboard play sets. So I'm interested in something like that. So we'll probably see something like that. We've been talking with a few other folks who are producing vehicles as well for this scale, and thinking about doing some collaborative effort where we might do an exclusive figure for them that they could sell with their vehicle with some Eagle Force stickers or those kind of things. So there's those opportunities that I think are out there that we're trying to explore right now.
That sounds pretty cool. I love the cardboard play sets. I know which ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is Fresh Monkey Fiction, are you guys considering, besides the digital handbook, are you guys thinking about doing an Eagle Force digital comic series?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do a comic series. I think that would be great. I think the challenge with that is, if I'm going to be honest, is that it's really hard to do. Comic books are super expensive to produce because you have writers, you have inkers, you have artists, you have colorists, you have letterers. There's a lot of people that need to get together to do it, unless you're fortunate enough that you have someone that can do everything for you, or you can actually produce that yourself. So when you start really looking at the numbers, it's very hard to do. I mean, there's certainly a lot of successful Kickstarter campaigns for comics, but it's when I start putting the numbers together, it becomes very difficult when you look at printing costs and all those things. I just don't know if we'd be able to raise enough to really do it. But I'm very interested in doing it. I mean, I would love nothing more than to have a regular Eagle Force comic. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So, Bill, I'm going to start winding down our interview. Now, you mentioned Larry Hama.
Yeah.
How did you guys get Larry Hama, the writer of G.I. Joe, to agree to be an action figure?
Well, I had a good friend, like I was mentioning. A lot of the ways I have to get to folks is just by meeting people online and in these community groups. And I have a good buddy, Chris Irving, who knows Larry really well, and he introduced us. And Chris really helped to try to convince Larry to do it. I think Larry, being Larry, was, I mean, not as enthusiastic. Larry's great, but I think, he's like, I don't know, do people really want an action figure of me? I don't know. He's that kind of personality. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Being a fan, I wanted that to go with my G.I. Joe collection, right?
Yes.
Like, I was like, I thought it would be great. So we convinced him to do it. And we did one version that we kickstarted. We sold out of that. And then we did another version, very similar to the first version, because folks really wanted it. So we're doing another version, and we'll have those in stock at the beginning of the year. Nice. I think I'm sitting on one of Larry right now. I think Larry's right here right now. There he is. Right there.
Sorry guys, I know this is an audio. But that's so cool.
Yeah. So it was really great to work with Larry on it. Even though, again, I think he was, he's not that kind of person where he's like, yeah, I really want an action figure of me, and we should do it. That wasn't really him, but he was okay with it. He loves the fans. He interacts with the fans all the time. So he gets it. He gets that it's something that the fans want more than Larry wants. But I think the fans really dig it. And you realize too, in doing that figure, what an impression he's left on just a huge generation of people.
Yes.
Like, you really that, the G.I. Joe stories he told, and stuff like the NAMM series, his other comic book stories, I mean, really resonated with folks. And folks want an action figure of Larry because he's amazing and he's great. And they want to have Larry on the shelf because that reminds them of all the great stories that they've read and that they still think about, that Larry has put out there. So I was so proud and happy to do it, and glad that it came out as well as it did.
Okay. Now again, now correct me if I'm wrong. So the Larry Hama action figure, again, it will be again available in next year.
Yeah, so we kickstarted it, and then we took a bunch of pre-orders. We'll fill those, and then we ordered some extras. So if you weren't able to get in on the pre-order, we'll have some stock available at the beginning of the year that we'll put up on our website.
Oh my God, man! I got to keep an eye out for that because I do want one.
And again, if you just follow us on social media, we'll post the progress of where we're at in our lines. This stuff takes time too, so we post a lot of in progress shots at the factory. Here's where that's at. Here's where this is at. Because these things don't happen overnight. They take 2, sometimes 3 years to make. Even with our original Eagle Force Returns line, we hit some factory issues that took almost close to 4 years to happen, unfortunately. But even just regular action figure production takes a couple of years to do. So it's, and so that's why I also appreciate the fans so much, because they're willing to stick with us through this stuff. They're willing to wait for the figure that they want, even though and maybe put their money up front, knowing they're not going to get it for maybe a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes towards, the community that I think has been built around the brand and the folks that are supporting it, because without them, it's just not going to happen. So I'm really thankful for everybody who continues to support the stuff we do, because without it, it wouldn't be out there.
One more question about the Larry Hama action figure. I know you said that you wanted a Larry Hama action figure with your G.I. Joe figures. Now, have any G.I. Joe fans send, pictures to you or posted on your websites with the, Larry's action figure standing with their G.I. Joe action figures?
Oh, sure. All the time. Yeah. Like after they got them in hand, they were posting all sorts of photos with that. Yeah, for sure. Everybody's really super excited about it. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So again, where can listeners buy the Eagle Force 40th anniversary action figures?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is go to our website at freshmonkeyfiction.com, and you'll find a link there to two places. One is zykatoys.com, where the current line is available to purchase today. And that's 4 waves of figures. So if you want to get our returns line, you can go there and get them today. If you want to pre-order the 40th line, there are links on our website to go to Big Bad Toy Store, where you can pre-order the 40th figures. Those will start shipping toward the end of next year and into 2023.
Okay. All right. So I'm slowly wrapping this up. What is your favorite toy or action figure in your collection?
Oh, that's a good one. Man, there's so many to choose from, and sometimes it seems to change every week. Sometimes I'll get a new figure in the mail and go, oh my gosh, this thing is amazing. I never thought I would have it on my shelf. I think the one I think I had that's my favorite is probably my version of the second version of Snake Eyes that came out. I think I still have that as part of it with Timber. I still have that again, it just speaks to like the comic book, to Larry, the action figures at the time. Like that figure itself just like resonates on just a lot of different levels. As much as I have a lot of figures on my shelf that are from some of my favorite movies like Big Trouble in Little China, as much, or favorite TV shows, that thing really like cements the reason I'm doing toys, right? It had so much play value, it had so much story value. It came with a wolf, the character had a sword. He had a great backstory. Larry really brought it together in the comic book. It really synergized everything, right, for me. So like that is probably my favorite figure for the fact that it really brings everything home for me.
All right. Now, what is your white whale, as in toys or action figures, that you want in your collection that you don't have?
Oh, that's a great question. So what I still am missing, I mentioned the Secret Wars line of the 80s, when I was a huge fan of that as a kid. Towards the end of that line, 3 figures came out that were not distributed in the United States. So they were on back of the packaging, and that was Iceman, Constrictor, and Electro.
Yeah.
They were only distributed in the UK and other, I think, international regions. They never made it to the US. I have never been able to pick up. I've managed to acquire the Iceman through a friend, but I'm still missing Constrictor and Electro, and I never really have been able to get them. They're out there. Certainly, you can get them. I mean, eBay now and all that. They're there. They're very high dollar. But those are the two, and because I just love that line, those are 2 figures that I've just never been able to, either drop the money on or just whatever. But yeah, they're not that they're not out there. I mean, I've had opportunities to acquire them, but they're not, they're not cheap anymore. And even they're not even, you got to sell. They're a few $100s now for a few of those. So those are the ones that I still don't have that I think I would kind of like to have because it's sort of missing in my collection.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
I have to say that it's really interesting that they made a Constrictor action figure. I mean, this guy, all it is what is it? wires just whip out of his hands, and
Yeah.
he just electrocutes somebody.
It's so interesting, that line, because they made a lot of figures that were not even in Secret Wars,
Yeah, that's right.
which was fine because, like, hey, like, I want Marvel figures, and the Hobgoblin figure of that line is my favorite figure of that line, and he wasn't in Secret Wars. But the figures that they chose to make, given what were out there at the time, were like sort of weird. Like, what, like, you don't see Thor, you don't see Hulk, although I think Hulk was planned. But instead, you see these characters like Constrictor show up. Just was a random B, maybe even C-list villain. Maybe I'll call it. So, yeah, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna wrap this up. So, favorite convention moment, whether as a fan or a creator.
Favorite convention moment was probably in, I would say, the late '80s. Maybe 90, right around, that time, where I went to a Dow show and I got to meet Adam Hughes and Mike Mignola in person. And I had them do sketches for me. And this is before they were really huge. Like, that was before, Mike had done Hellboy. Adam Hughes, I think, was doing JLA. Maybe it was JLI at the time. And I was just a huge fan of their art. And I had this toy catalog or comic book catalog, and I can't remember the name of the company at the time. And Adam Hughes had done a Ninja Turtles cover for it. It's like, I mean, he never really had done that, and I kept it in my collection for a while, right? And I had him sign it because I was like, because Adam Hughes is not known for that. He's known for a different type of art, but like. He did this random Adam Ninja Turtle cover, and I wasn't even super into Ninja Turtles, but the fact that, like, it was something different, and I had him sign it, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot that I even did this thing." And he's like, "I'm surprised you have it because it was done as a catalog from from a mail order way toy company." And so that's one of the things I have in my collection that I really like, because it was just this random thing that was really fun to have, and that was a great little moment of bringing something to an artist that they had almost forgot they had done at that point. Probably they were a little embarrassed by, to maybe a certain degree, because it was early on in their career. But it was something that, like, I was such a fan of theirs collecting that, artwork, that I think it really just was a really great moment to kind of have that. And I still have that in my collection today.
That is pretty cool. I'm just, when you go to conventions, do you have like a table? Do you, when you go to, do you have does Fresh Monkey Fiction, do they have a booth at a conventions or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we do a convention every year called Designer Con, although this year we're not going to do it because of COVID stuff. I'm still not ready to go back to conventions, maybe next year for sure.
Okay.
But usually I have a booth at Designer Con because it's local in Los Angeles. I don't do any East Coast shows. It's just hard for me to, like, get away from work that much to go. And then sometimes we'll do San Diego Comic-Con. We've had a booth there a couple times. So it just depends on if I have enough that I think it makes sense to do. Maybe next Comic-Con next year, maybe we'll have a booth there as well. But Designer Con, we always have a booth for, because I just love that show. It's just a great show with a bunch of other folks who are doing designer type things, toys, artwork, prints. It's a great convention. If you're ever in Los Angeles in November, I highly recommend people checking it out, if you like independent creator stuff. Yeah.
All right. And then I know at the beginning we talked about this. You kind of answered this question already, because you're planning a trip to coming to Hawaii. But I'm gonna ask, have you and your family, have you guys been to Hawaii before?
My wife has been. I have never been, so I'm really excited. We're gonna go, and we're gonna be there in a few weeks. So I have never. I have a huge fear of flying, so I don't travel much, but it's my wife's birthday and she wanted to go to Hawaii. So we planned this trip prior to the pandemic and we had to cancel it. So now with things opening up a little bit, we're gonna try to go out in a few weeks. So it should be a lot of fun.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Do you have any last words to our listeners?
I mean, I just want to thank everybody for listening. You know, I don't have much of an opportunity to have these kind of in-depth conversations. So thank you, Jason, for having me on and allowing me to ramble on for an hour. I think it's great. I really appreciate you coming with a lot of questions, and I hope that the fans, you know, who are listening, you know, get some information, and they can always, again, like reach out to me on social media, and we can interact there as well.
Again, where can listeners follow you on social media?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to follow us on Facebook or Instagram. They can get the links off of our website at freshmonkeyfiction.com.
Okay, all right. You know, Bill, I want to wish you all the success for for Fresh Monkey Fiction Company, and also for the Eagle Force 40th anniversary action line. You know, again, I wish you all the best. And Bill, thank you very much. You know, mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian. Thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to interview you. And no, it was not rambling, because it's always so cool to talk to another toy collector. It
Yeah,
really
no,
is.
thank you. Thank you. And again, I appreciate you really coming in with a lot of research and questions. That's great. Like I usually get very generic questions. So this has been some really great time to interview and talk. And it's been a great hour. I'm so happy to have it. So thank you.
No, thank you
Yeah.
very much. And it's so cool. I'm sorry, now I'm going to ramble a bit. It's so cool here to hear another Star Wars fan and you know, because I still have my Star Wars action figures, even some of the G.I. Joe ones, I still do. And the cardboard play sets that you're talking about, the Star Wars one, I had the Bespin one,
Bespin one's great from
yeah,
Sears. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, that was so cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So again, you know, Bill, thank you very much. And also I want to thank Hannah of Superfan Promotions for help setting up this interview. Hannah, thank you very much. You know, if you are a new toy collector, or if you are a lifelong toy collector, or please check out the Eagle Force 40th anniversary action figures at these websites: bigbadtoystore.com, freshmonkeyfiction.com, and Zika Toys, not Z-I-C as in Charlie, A, toys.com. And Bill, I think the cool thing, what you talked about was, you know, if, you know, for collectors, if they want to take it out of the packaging, we can take it out. And if we want to put it back in the packaging,
Yep.
we can do that.
Yeah.
You know, that's so cool. And again, guys, just check out this website. If you're a big action figure collector, check out the websites. Again, I love the accessories, especially the interchangeable hands and heads. That's great. It really is. So, and I also want to thank Drew, the co-host for Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.